Hi, my name is Willow, and I created my author study for a first grade classroom setting. And I chose Mo Willems for the author study because his books were really some of my favorites growing up. And I really wanted to introduce these into my classroom. And so, growing up, I really always loved how his stories are full of humor, but also really carry very meaningful lessons. And I think he does an excellent job at keeping kids engaged while also teaching them these important lessons. So I was excited to introduce this into my first grade classroom. So before writing his books, Mo Willems started his career as a stand-up comedian and writer for Sesame Street. And he's most well known for his unique humor, very expressive illustrations, and he does all of these illustrations throughout all of his books himself. And his books that really invite kids to actively participate, like Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. And so, to capture students' attention on day one of the author study, we opened with a very funny animated video of the pigeon from Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus. And I chose to do this because it really immediately sets the tone for the unit. All of his books are very silly, and this helped to set the tone as silly, engaging, and interactive. And it really gave the students a sense of Willems's humor and style we'd be exploring throughout the rest of the unit, and to really get them excited for what's to come. And then to close out the unit, we ended with a character parade. And so where each student would dress up as their favorite Mo Willems character throughout the unit. And so I chose this because it not only tests their reading comprehension skills, and their ability to remember the characters we read and what they look like and their how they would dress, but also because it really helps the students engage with the characters on a different level and really become them, embody them. And so for my final independent lesson, I chose to use Knuffle Bunny, a cautionary tale. And the before reading strategy for this book was a short book trailer and also then book talk right before we started reading. And I chose these things because they not only help introduce the students to the characters and really reinforce the different parts of the book, but they really help to spark curiosity and build anticipation and get the kids excited, which is super important. And that helps to retain attention. And then during reading, we used a shared reading and echo reading strategy. And I chose to do this because some of the sentences and vocabulary in Nuffle Bunny can be a bit challenging. And so this shared strategy helps to promote fluency and engagement and reading comprehension in a way that is more supportive than something just like independent reading. And then after reading, we created a class word cloud. So for this, each student chose one word that reminded them of the story's conflict or how the characters felt throughout the book. And so I chose this because I knew for the after reading strategy, I wanted to reinforce the objective for the unit, which is to better understand how the conflict impacts other elements of the story. But I also wanted to do it in a visual way, an interactive way to change things up a bit. So yes, like worksheets can be very effective, but they're often quite boring. And I know that I'm in a first grade classroom, so I wanted to do something a little different. And then my favorite part of the author study was really just reconnecting with some of my favorite childhood books. For example, Knuffle Bunny, which I did for my final independent lesson plan, and also Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus were definitely two of my favorites growing up. And reading these really reminded me of how these stories made me feel as a kid. And so it was really special to also come back to these books through a new lens, because I always thought of these books as purely funny and whimsical. Looking at them through this teacher lens made me realize how much they can still teach. And so they teach about emotions, social skills, and problem solving, all while being very funny and whimsical. And then the most challenging part of the unit, I think, was just planning the full 2 week narrative and being very specific about how I was going to use each of the books. I think it's very easy to have like a general idea of what you want to do in a classroom, but actually writing it all down step by step requires so much more thought. And I really had to think critically about how each book would be used, how it fit into the larger goals of the unit, and why it made sense for things like literature circles versus guided reading. And it also really just gave me a whole new appreciation for all the planning my teachers must have had to do behind the scenes when I was a student. I really liked this project.